Welcome back, everybody. All right. Before we jump into the material today, any questions about what we covered yesterday? Any questions about what we've been doing thus far? Any thoughts on JavaScript? Any thoughts on computers in general, whether we like them or not?
Questions and thoughts.
Sorry? Nothing? Nothing at all? How's everybody's Tuesday going? And we start with that. Is
Uh,
this thing on?
yeah,
Hello?
yeah, it's on.
Oh, hi. Desiree
Yeah, it's
Milton.
yeah, my Tuesday's going all right, I suppose. And like for JavaScript, I was just doing the SDS or credit thing, and I was having a hard time, I guess doing the putting like the strings together, I guess, or like I guess no. It's something more line of making like a new line and then adding a tab because there's like a specific way that the challenge wants you to write like the code. So I was having a little trouble with that. But I got past it like actually I got past it like literally like 20 minutes ago. So
Is this extra credit available to everybody?
yeah.
Can I, is it in Canvas?
Yeah.
Oh, dang. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's like it gives you like different like challenges and stuff. Um so
I mean, can we do one together and then we just won't tell Max?
I wouldn't mind that actually.
Good with that, 'cause I hate it.
Tell us more about how you feel about it. Is it too late in the day to have caffeine? This was the cutoff. Like, I mean, y'all are on Eastern, so I think the cutoff was like an hour ago. You don't want it to
It's
disrupt your
never,
sleep. So,
never too late.
okay. So there's
Yeah.
not a cutoff. Good.
Nah, no cutoff. Do what you gotta do.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and jump right in. So where we ended yesterday, we got through a little bit of talking about Git and GitHub. We looked at a really easy way of dragging and dropping files over, and then we briefly looked at GitHub Desktop. We're gonna build on top of GitHub Desktop a little bit more. We're going to talk about some of the terminology we covered yesterday. So and then there's a lot of stuff that you can do with GitHub Desktop, and I want to highlight a few of those things. Um, yeah, let's not work on other people's code just yet. So let's get let's get back into the groove of it. Let's actually do an exercise right now to practice committing and pushing. And what I want everybody to do is I want you to open up GitHub desktop. I want you to recall yesterday that we cloned down our repository, our GitHub username .github.io. So I want you to open up GitHub desktop. I want you to go into your repository. And so let me just type this out so we're all on the same page. I want you to go into GitHub desktop. I want you to open up VS Code using GitHub desktop. And then I would like for you to edit your index.html, or everybody should have an index.html. Otherwise, we're not going to have a valid website, and that's going to be a problem. So make sure that you've got an index.html in your repository. You should, if you copy pasted the same code that I did. If you copy pasted your own portfolio code, great. You should also have an index.html, so that shouldn't be a problem. But what I want you to do is somewhere inside of your index.html, I want you to insert the word Apple. And then I want you to commit and push. This will prove to me that everybody is capable of using GitHub desktop to push code. Any questions?
So we just open up GitHub desktop and open up Visual Studio to edit the index.html, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Save, commit, push. Just make sure that you use the word Apple. And I don't really care where you put it. Just put it somewhere inside of index.html. You can put it inside of a comment for all I care. Just anywhere, put Apple. Nice. We got a bunch of people that already have it in there. Ozma, the bear. Tiffany, Kaleido. It's a cool username. Terry, you got Apple in there, nice. Money. Okay, I'm gonna pick on a couple of these and see where it's at. So I'm gonna check on Desiree 2 minutes ago. Okay, Desiree, one thing that we need to fix here is you have a folder D2. So when you went and copied and pasted files, instead of copying the folder over, what we want to do is we want to copy just the files and leave them at the root. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I couldn't figure out how to get rid of the folder to put just the files in.
Sure. Can I show you how to do that right now? So let me get to the, okay, cool. Yeah, there might be a couple of people that did the same thing. And it's really important that we put index.html at the root of the repository for later. So if you did the same thing and you put a folder in, let me show you how to undo that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my GitHub desktop, and then I'm going to get myself in the same situation that y'all are in. So I'm going to open up VS Code. I'm going to get myself a terminal, and then I'm going to make a directory called day2. I'm going to move everything into day2. Okay. Empty folder D2. Commit, push. All right, so check this out. My github.io should look pretty similar to what y'all are describing, where instead of having my index.html and all that stuff out here, instead I have it inside of a folder called D2. So let's undo that and let's get everything that's sitting here in D2 and let's bring it up a level and take it out of this D2 folder. So to do that, the easiest way is to open up GitHub desktop. And if you don't see a screen like mine, meaning you don't see these three buttons, and so maybe you have some changes going on, that's okay. What I want you to do is click Show in Finder. And if you don't see these three buttons, you can get to these same three buttons by clicking Repository up in the top menu bar. And those three buttons are here: View in GitHub, Open in Terminal, Show in Finder, Open in VS Code. So either way, what I want you to do is I want you to click Show in Finder. You can also hit Command Shift F, and that will do the same thing. And you should be staring at D2 or whatever folder it is that you put in there. I'm going to wait for a second for people to get to this screen. Let me know if you're having trouble getting to this. Okay, from here, let's just hop into D2. Let's grab everything in here. We can select all of it. We can hit Command A, whatever you want to do. Right click, hit copy, back up, and paste it up here. Do whatever you got to do to bring those files up a level. I don't understand why it's taking so long to copy image over. It's less than a megabyte, but whatever. Oops. I'm going to move that to the trash. Okay. So after you've done that, when you go back to GitHub Desktop, you should see that a bunch of stuff has changed. And that makes sense because we've moved things from within a folder up a level. So we'll do the same thing. We'll make a commit. We'll say something like moving files out of folder, commit, and push. Now, if I go back and look at GitHub and refresh, we'll see that all of those files got brought out up to the root level, which is where we want them.
Can you please repeat after you copied that, then what do you do?
Yeah, so after I've brought all those files up to the root folder, is that what you're saying?
You said to copy and then, or right click and copy, and then what do you do with them?
Oh yeah, so after you've copied them, go up a level to the root of your repository, which should look like your username.github.io. So go up a folder. Does that make sense?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, let me stop sharing and you show me what you're looking at. Okay, so you're yeah, so let's go to GitHub desktop. Cool. Show in Finder, you can get to that by clicking up on the repository in the menu bar. So up here. There you go. And then click Show in Finder. Yeah, click on the window one more time. There you go. Repository, Show in Finder. Perfect. Okay. Click into D4 portfolio. All right, grab all this stuff. So select all of it with Command A or, yep, there you go. Just drag it from there to there. Perfect. And then you can safely delete the D4 portfolio folder if you'd like. It's just an empty folder now. Okay, move the trash. Nice. Okay, then head back to GitHub desktop and let's commit these changes. So you've reshuffled stuff. So Git's going to have a bunch of stuff that looks like it's deleted files and re-added them, but in all reality, you've just moved them from one location to another. Yep, commit message of push. So yeah, in the commit message, just say something like moving files out of D4 portfolio, whatever you want to. Cool. Push. Great. Now, if you click over on the GitHub page, you can confirm that you've pushed exactly what you think you have. So we should have gotten rid of this folder, and then we should have expanded all the files here. So go ahead and refresh that GitHub page behind you. Yep, and your files have changed. So now you have everything up at the root of your repository. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Nice
Thanks.
job. Anybody else?
For some reason, mine didn't work right.
Show me what you got, Hassan.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you have everything. Just push. Make sure you push.
Oh.
Now check out GitHub.
All right, I should be good now then.
Is that it?
Yes.
Nice. Very nice.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna pick on a couple more people because it seems like we've all pretty much gotten it. Zakim, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm switching it right now. I'm having trouble with the images, kind of.
Oh, is it not letting you move the image folder up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had the same thing. I had two monitors, and over on my other monitor, it popped up a little dialogue asking me if it was okay to move. I didn't see it, but I don't know if maybe you're hitting the same thing. Cornelius, what we're doing right now is we're practicing pushing a commit. Here is the instructions. Dakeem, are you able to do it?
Yeah, I might just.
Yeah, sounds good. Go for it. All right. So this is probably not. So let's go back to GitHub Desktop. Nice. Okay. And then let's open up Finder. So you could do that by getting, yep, exactly. Clicking on repository, show a Finder. Excellent. Go into yep. Go in there. Right click on that. Alternatively, a slightly easier option here is to do what we did. Click on that. Sorry, click on that one.
All right.
There we go. Now just
Oh,
drag that from there to there.
I see.
There we go. And now you can nuke that D1. Yeah, exactly. And all these changes should have gotten picked up in Git. So it's the move to trash. I don't know why Mac doesn't just say delete. Yep,
Right.
commit and push. So here.
Oh yeah, I gotta move in.
Excellent. Nice job.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And then let's see.
Nathan, can you double check
Yeah,
if it
Andrew. Go ahead.
worked?
Ozma, yours has been working.
Yeah, I had the image folder and I pretty much did the same thing. I pushed it back, and then deleted the empty folder for images and I committed it. I just don't know how to double check.
It looks good to me. The way that you could double check it is by, oh, I see. So let me share my screen. This is what I see. And the way that you can double check this is by going to GitHub and seeing what GitHub has. So it looks like we exploded the images into the root. So it's like we lost that image folder. The index.html is at the root, which is what you want, but we want to get all of these .jpegs and WebPs back into the image folder. Does that make sense?
Oh, I just deleted that. Okay, I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and undo
Yeah,
that.
you went one step too far. You flattened the whole thing, which is
No
it is
worries.
also acceptable, but I liked the previous commit here where and so what's actually kind of cool about Git, if you want to hold off for a second, what's kind of cool about Git is that we can see here in this commit exactly what you did. You moved everything from image cover.jpg to cover.jpg. So you basically took it out of that folder. But because we track all of this with Git, we can undo what you did in this one commit. Feel free though, if you want to manually do this, but here in a second, I'm going to talk about how we can undo.
Okay, I'll just wait
changes
for
like this.
that. It'll be easier for me.
Yeah, sounds good. This will be a great example to. Cornelius, no, we don't need to have images. I'm guessing, Ozma, this is stuff that you've been working on. The the example code that I was using yesterday, I think it had like 3 images in it. So feel free to use whatever you've got. You don't have to add images if you don't want. Okay, and then I'm going to pick on a couple more people, and then we're going to move on. Who is XSP Shadia is not here, so that's probably why that's breaking. And then, Deandra, how is it going? Oh, you got the same thing. Is Deandra here? No, not today. Okay. And then Mr. Brightside, 75. Joseph. Oh, nice. So we've got everything here except for, I think we're just missing Apple. My guess. Yeah. And Joe is not here today, so that would be why. Cool. Safi, how are
Hello.
you doing?
I'm doing well. So I did insert, I essentially created a new week 6 day 2, and then essentially did the exclamation point so that it spewed out the default HTML, and then I put Apple into that. But were we supposed to essentially insert it to something that we were working on previously, or?
So what I want you to do is I want you to put it into your repo and then commit and push that. Do you have the repo from yesterday set up? I see it here on GitHub. You have the index.html uploaded. Were you
Right.
able to commit and push?
Yeah, so I did it through the terminal on VS Code through Git, but I was kind of like essentially tinkering with it through the desktop version. But
Yeah, so VS Code has a Git integration. You can do GitHub and Git things through VS Code. Try to stay away from it for this week, and practice doing it through GitHub Desktop. The problem that you're going to run into is if you interact with Git through GitHub Desktop and through the VS Code Git, they're both going to get confused because they're not sure which one is doing
Right.
what. Um, so try to stick with GitHub Desktop. If you hate GitHub Desktop, stick purely with the VS Code Git. You got to pick one, otherwise it's going to get confusing. If you're having problems though committing and pushing Apple, please just let me know.
okay, thank you.
All right. So now everybody's gotten a chance to warm up. Next is Orange. And I'm handing out awards this time. If someone beats me to it before I update the code, then you win a special prize. Orange.
Wait, we're adding orange or is it something else?
Add orange somewhere in index.html and commit and push. Ozma is in first place. Insert the word orange somewhere in your index.html. Commit and push. Okay, we got a couple people tied for second. Cornelius is, we had 3 people tied for second. Monty, Cornelius, and I don't know what this username is. H Van's like, which one is that? Oh, Harley. Okay, so we had 3 people tied for second. Nice. Azad, Zakim, are you all able to commit and push?
I did it, but it's for some reason it's like I'm doing it again. I'm gonna re-comment.
Yeah, I already did it. I thought it was fun.
Oh, okay. Maybe my script is not working. Let's see. How big on Azad? There it is. Commit. Let's look at the commit.
I did it again.
Oh, here's D2 again. It's back.
All right, is it good now? I
Wait,
got,
did
like,
you get it?
orange. Yeah, I did it.
Oh, see, it's editing editing D2 index.html.
It still is? What?
It still is.
I deleted that. All right, let me go fix it again.
Okay.
Show and finder. Move to trash. Please save. Delete for good.
Desiree, how are you doing? Looks like you deleted everything just now.
So it put it all back into that file and I tried to fix it and I don't know what happened.
Okay. Do you mind if we take a look real quick? Okay, so close out of VS Code because you moved some files around. Probably a safe bet that VS Code is equally confused. Okay, let's open it up back in through GitHub Desktop. Let's open up VS Code. Nice. Okay. Editor could not be opened because the file was not found. Oh, close this. Oh, sorry. I mean, yeah, back. Oh, okay. Wait. Hold on. On this screen, grab image, index, readme, style, and weather. Yeah, all of that. Grab all of that. Select all of it. Excellent. Drag that into your github.io folder up above.
Oh, I see. No, stop it.
Nice. So we had people making files in folders and then people taking the files too far up out of the folders. That is exactly how it should look. Very nice. And if we look at GitHub, perfect. Yeah, this looks yeah, that looks exactly right. Nice job. Okay, well, let's call it here with that exercise. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about adding other people's code and looking at working on other people's repositories. So far, we've only worked on our own, but that's not all that we're limited to. And just a reminder, here's the link to the slides that I'm looking at. Feel free to hop in here if it's hard to stare at my screen. Okay. So, like I mentioned, GitHub is more than just working on your own code. You can work on code with other people. I'm going to pick on Max as an example of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and snag, I think he still has an example portfolio repo. I'm going to go and snag some of the code from that Max has worked on previously, in case I want to steal more front-end code that he's written, because he writes a lot of good code. So I'm going to go into GitHub Desktop. And right now, I have some changes here. I need to commit. So let me do that. Add my images to the image folder. Hit push. Okay. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get this code, and let me show you what this looks like. GitHub. Yeah, great. So this is some example portfolio code that Max has used in the past. It's very similar to the portfolio code that was in week 4, day 2. But let's say that I wanted to get some of this code and work on it on my computer. Or let me actually just pick on somebody else in class. Let's not use Max's example portfolio code. Let me grab the links from portfolio. Here we go. Who could I pick on? Cornelius, I'm going to pick on you. So let's say that I want to go and work on Cornelius's, sorry, this isn't Cornelius. Yeah, let's say I wanted to work on Cornelius's repo. So how could I get this code and pull it into onto my computer so that I could start hacking on it? The answer is go into GitHub Desktop, and up here at the top left where there's this current repository, I can click Add and Clone Repository. And this will let me go and grab anybody else's code on GitHub. And I could find repositories by going to, if I use this list, it's only going to show me my repositories. If I want to grab other repositories, I go to URL, and here I just enter it in. So I'm going to grab the name. It's here. It's also in the URL, but repository. Grab this. I don't know why I got all these spaces in here. Get rid of those. Great. And click clone. Now, if I open up VS Code, I'm working on Cornelius Carswell's One Awesome Gamer. I'm working on that code. So with Git, it makes it really easy for you to be able to clone other people's stuff and start hacking on their code, taking the parts that you like and adding it to your own. Now, one thing I will note is if I wanted to steal Cornelius's code, so let's say, Cornelius, your code is now mine. I'm now the One Awesome Gamer. My name is Nathan Evans. If I go over here and I try to push this code, I won't have access. And it's going to say that down here. You don't have right access to cornytails.github.io. And it'll ask me if I want to create a fork. So forks are a way for you to create copies of other people's repos. So I'm going to do that just to show what this looks like. So I clicked create a fork. And now if I go to GitHub and I look at my repositories, let's see that I now have a cornytails.github.io. And it's a fork of the original repo, meaning that I now have my own copy of that repo that I can now work on. So I don't have the ability to push directly to Cornelius's repo, but I can copy the repo and create my own copy of that repository. Does that make sense? Is there any questions about that? The only person that's allowed to push to a repository is you, unless you add other people to it, which we're probably not going to get into today. Cornelius?
I don't know if it's just been answered. So like, so when you clone it, you already have, like you showed, like we already have that clone. It's already saved automatically. So any changes we have to that clone is just set in there. and not to
Right.
the original.
Right, yes. Yep. And if you own the repository, so your clone on your machine, you automatically have permissions to push to that repository on GitHub. Other people also have the ability to clone down your repository, but that doesn't give them the permission to push to it. The only way that they could push to your repository, if they don't own it, is if they fork it and they create copies of your repository. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. And one thing that you might be asking is why do I need to know this? You don't really need to know about forks. I just wanted to show you that it's possible for you to take somebody else's code and make a copy of it for your own purposes. You're probably not going to need to do that this week, but one thing that you can do is if you ever see some code on github.com that you think that you might want, there's a button up here called fork. So an example of this is if we go to Facebook React, you can go up here and click fork and create your own repository, your own copy of that. And the reason why you might want to do that is if you ever see something interesting and you want to save it for later, it's kind of like bookmarking, except it's better. You're creating an actual copy of the code that you see on GitHub, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, so if you want to have other people work on a project with you, so Cornelius, can I pick on you to demonstrate this?
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, so Cornelius, what I want you to do is I want you to go to ponytails.github.io, this repo page, and I want you to go into settings.
Yep. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm here.
I'll do-
Then go to.
Yeah, go into settings and then go down to collaborators.
Collaborators. It's all the way down.
Were you able to find collaborators? It's like the second option under settings. Do you see that?
Oh wait, hold on, I missed it. I clicked on my profile and saw like
So
only
go to
feature.
your repo. So
Oh, okay.
ponytails.github.io. And then up in
Yep.
the top bar, hit settings.
Top bar settings. Sorry. Yep, got it. And collaborators.
And then, yep, collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
Click add people.
I just gotta sign in. All right, add people.
And then in the add people, put DE1 UX.
DE1 UX. Gotcha.
And then just add me as a collaborator.
Yep, adding in.
Nice. Does it have a spot to assign permissions?
It's the only thing I really see is pending invite, and what happens
Okay.
if
So let me accept the invite. So I'm going to get an email saying that I was invited to the project. Let's see, view invitation. Here it is. So I got this email saying that I'm invited to this. I'm going to hit accept invitation. Okay, now, Cornelius, if you refresh that page, it should show that I accepted the invitation. Does it allow you to set permissions for me?
hold on, I'm refreshing. It still says pending on mine, awaiting for your response.
That's
Let me
not,
try to click on oh, sorry.
this person right here isn't Cornelius.
Oh, somebody else invited me. Oh, well, thank you, whoever invited me. I clicked the wrong invitation. Ah, here we go. Corny Tails, thank you. Thanks for catching me on that. Okay, refresh. Now, do you have the ability to set my permission?
Yep, now you are a collaborator, and then if I Do I need to click on you?
Yeah,
Oh,
can you
okay.
bump me up to more than collaborator?
How do I do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Switch to actually let's just try this. Okay, so you've made me a
I'm gonna
collaborator on
share
your
my, how about I
project.
share my, I can share my screen.
Let's try this. So you've made me
Okay.
a collaborator. Let's see now if I can push code.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. That was enough. I think. No. This was sorry, I'm on the fork of Corny Tails. So I need to get rid of the fork. Let's do that. And then let's go back. So I'm gonna go and grab Corny Tails again. I'm gonna download it to my machine. Now that I'm a contributor of Corny Tails, let's see if I can successfully push code. So this is Cornelius Carswell and Nathan Evans. So we're both collaborators on this project. Add myself to index.html. Commit, push. Nice. There we go. So to answer Ozma, to answer your question, that would be how we can set up a project for multiple people to push on and work on together. So Cornelius has pushed some code. I've now pushed some code to it. Cornelius, if you open up GitHub Desktop, you will need to poll in order to get the change that I just pushed to your repository.
Mm-hmm.
But that is how you can set it up to invite other people to work on your project with you. Any questions about that?
Not at all.
And to be clear, Cornelius still owns the repository. I don't have access to the settings tab here. So Cornelius, at any point in time, can kick me out of the project and say, I don't want any more contributions from Nathan. I'm going to remove him as a collaborator. You never lose control of the repository. You only are able to invite the people that you want to have come and work on this. And also, go ahead, Terry.
Sorry, my MacBook internet crashed out. I didn't get to see what happened. I know that y'all did collaborators. Yeah, invited, but I don't know what happened after that.
So we were just going through what it looks like for two people to work on a repository together, what it looks like to add somebody as a collaborator, to invite someone to come be able to push code. I don't think we're going to probably need to do that this week, but I just wanted to share because somebody was asking what it looks like to invite other people.
Okay.
Short answer, you didn't miss anything.
Okay. And one more thing, like if you see like two of me, like just like two videos of me, that's just my my Windows, just in case my MacBook internet crashes again.
Fair enough. But great question. And also, this is very realistic with what it will be like in professional software development. Multiple people at the company will be collaborators on a GitHub repo, assuming that the company you work for uses GitHub, because there's GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Git, all these kinds of Git services. But most of your time will be spent working on a repository for some sort of software product, and you will all be collaborators on that project, and you'll all be simultaneously pushing code to that repository. So this week we're only going to be individually pushing to these repos, but in the real world, you can expect to have a lot of people simultaneously pushing to and collaborating on the same software project. Okay. So that's what it looks like to work on other people's code. Feel free to check that out, especially if you find something that you really like, other people's code that you're interested in. feel free to clone it and check it out. We talked about that. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to recover some files. And this can be useful for all sorts of situations, like you accidentally delete some files, or you've made a change that you want to undo, like maybe you've moved all of your files from image to the root of your repository and you wish that you could undo that. There's lots of different things that you can do with Git, because Git is tracking every single change that you make. So every time that you commit, you're effectively taking a snapshot of your repository and sending that up to GitHub each time you push. So there's a couple of things that you can do here that's to your advantage. I'm going to go through this. I don't want anybody to do this on their computer necessarily. I'm going to go through and demo it on my machine. And I also have the slides here as reference. So if you ever get into a situation where you need to do this, the material and the video is going to be here for you, but mainly just sit back and watch as I go through a couple of different scenarios that you might encounter. So the first one that I'm going to go through is kind of the easiest, which is you lose your hard drive. Your Mac crashes and you've lost all of your code. So let's simulate that really quick. If I open up GitHub Desktop, let's go look in Finder. I'm still working on Cornelius, so I'm going to go and switch back to my repository. Okay, here I am looking at my deluxe.github.io. I'm going to go to Show in Finder. I'm going to take everything in here, and I'm going to simulate my Mac crashing or losing my hard drive, whatever. I've lost all my files. Actually, let's make it a little bit more compelling. Let's just completely delete. Let's just completely delete this folder off of my computer. Okay. Now this is saying can't find deluxe.github.io, and it's trying to find it. How do I fix this? Clone again. Show in Finder. Boom. All my stuff is back. Okay, if I wanted to do the same thing, but not use the shortcut that just showed up, I can instead close this out. I can clone repository and do it from scratch. I can go to reclone deluxe.github.io and same thing. I have a fresh clone and all of my files are back on my machine. Pretty simple. Okay. Now, one thing to note is that this assumes that every change that I made, I committed and pushed. If I had done something like, let's open in VS Code. If I had done something like gone into index.html and I had made some changes, like changed my title from Nathan Evans Portfolio to Nathan's Portfolio, and maybe I got rid of some fonts, maybe I changed style to styles.css, whatever. I made some changes to my code, right? But I haven't yet committed or pushed, meaning that I haven't taken a snapshot and sent it up to GitHub. If I then blow away these files, so I haven't made a commit, I then go into Finder and I blow away all this stuff. Let's move this to the trash. Let's nuke this folder. If I do all of that and I hit clone again to get a fresh copy, and I open this up in VS Code, notice how everything reverted, right? We went from Nathan's Portfolio and the font changes and styles.css back to what my previous commit had. So this only works as long as you're committing and pushing, which is that muscle memory that I'm asking all of you to build up. So make sure that you're committing and pushing often, and if you ever get into a situation where stuff gets nuked, you'll be just fine, or you'll have a recent copy, and you won't have lost that many of your changes. Okay, so that's one example. The other cool thing that you could do with Git is the example that we saw earlier, where the images from the image folder got moved up to the root. So let's say that you make some changes. I'm going to take these and move them. And then I'm going to just delete the image folder. I don't know what my stuff is, but I'm going to get rid of that too. Okay, so I've moved all my images up to the top of my repo. I'm going to go back to GitHub Desktop. I'm going to say move images top of commit push. Okay. And then sometime later, I realized, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't want to move all of my images from inside the folder to the top of my repo. I want to move them back. So this is a contrived example because I could just as easily create a new folder called image and shove the 3 files in there. But imagine that you have 20 images or 30 or 60 or whatever, and it's going to be a lot of work for you to take all those images and move them back into the folder. Or same thing with code. Let's say that you're working hard on some code and you commit and you push and you're like, man, I don't know what I was doing with the code that I committed. I just want to undo all of it. Maybe what I was doing just doesn't work or it's full of bugs or something. So how do you go from where you are now at your current version of code, and how do you rewind time back to where you were? Let me show you. So in GitHub Desktop, we've been looking at this changes tab, but there's also a history tab. And this is where the notion of all of these commits come into play. Because each commit is like a snapshot, we can rewind time by just looking at whatever the snapshot is that we want to rewind. And we can click on revert changes in commit. And now if we go back to our code, notice how I have my image folder with all of my images nicely placed back inside of image. Even my stuff, the folder that I deleted has shown back up. Any questions about that?
Yeah,
Anybody
just a
think
quick
that this
one.
is pretty cool? Go ahead.
Yes, so I am in history. Where do I click on after I find the one that I need to revert?
So right click on the thing that you want to revert and hit revert changes in commit.
Oh, yep, I see it.
And did that do everything that you wanted it to do?
Let me double check. Yep, that worked. Thank you.
Perfect. And so that's not limited to just the most recent commit that you made. So like, let's go back to yesterday where I was playing around with the spelling of drools. You can go back as far as you want and look at the things that you've done and undo them if you'd like. It doesn't mean that it's always going to work. So for example, I just did that and it created a merge conflict. So let's go and see what happened here. Okay. And the reason why I created a merge conflict is that it couldn't cleanly undo those changes. And the reason why is because I made changes around it since the last time that I edited this. So now I have to choose which of these two versions I want to accept. So kind of a bad example. Sometimes Git isn't able to undo things perfectly and automatically for you, but it will do its best. It will try to suggest the cleanest revert that it possibly can. But all of this is stuff that hopefully you don't have to do. But if you get into a situation where you're like, man, I really need to be able to get back to a certain version of my code, or I need to go back and figure out what I was doing yesterday, this history tab is a great way of looking back and seeing what you're doing. But again, this only works if you commit and push. If you don't commit and push, you're not going to have these commits. You're not going to be taking these snapshots of your code, and you won't be building up that history. So this all depends on you committing and pushing. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to show here is a bit more useful in the sense that, let's say that you've made some changes, but you haven't committed and pushed them, and you want to undo them. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm over here in my code, and I have a change here, so I'm going to go ahead and commit this quickly. Add index.html. Let's commit that. There are no changes to commit. Okay, let's discard it then. All right. So let's make some changes here. In my about section, I'm gonna say this is some stuff about me. Very interesting. I want to put my website. Okay. So we've made some changes. We haven't committed it. We haven't pushed it. What if we don't want these changes? What if we say, I want to go back to where I had my lorem ipsum because that text is way more useful for visualizing what this about section looks like on my website. I just want to get rid of this. One thing that we can do to get rid of these changes is simply click on the file over here on the side, right click, and hit discard changes. Now we've undone everything that was that we just did in VS Code. So that's similar to going to history and finding the commit and reverting it, but all done without necessarily needing to commit and push and all of that. We could do that without, we can undo changes without necessarily committing them, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So I've covered these two kind of distinct situations where you've deleted some files or you've made some changes and you want to undo them. So they're here for your reference. And I think we've seen a couple of people in class encounter this where what GitHub desktop does sometimes could be confusing. Like we saw an abort error yesterday. We've seen a couple things where, like for example, somebody moved their files up outside of their repo. That caused GitHub desktop to be a little bit confused. There's a nuclear option here where if everything is just awful and you don't know what's going on, and you can't get a hold of somebody like me or Max or one of the other instructors to try to get some help, or one of the one of your mentors to try to get some help, the nuclear option here is that you can just reclone. You can always start over, given that you have a recent commit pushed up. You can always start over, and that's what's so nice about committing and pushing to GitHub, is that you always have a history. But one thing that I would encourage is that just because you commit and push your code to GitHub doesn't mean that you can't also have a separate backup. Like we were talking about iCloud yesterday and having a redundant layer on top of using GitHub. I don't recommend doing it all of the time, but if you get into a situation where you just need to reclone something and start over because GitHub desktop is all sorts of messed up, don't forget that you can just open up Finder, look for your code, create a zip or copy it or do something, make a backup of whatever it is and shove it somewhere on your desktop or in your documents, and then reclone down the repo from GitHub, and then move things over from that folder that you have back into GitHub. I mean, don't forget about these kind of low tech options where, yeah, you could, if everything's awful, just try to salvage what you can from the folder that's on your computer, and then just get a fresh copy from GitHub and transplant things back into it. So that's kind of the everything is awful. What do we do to get back from it? And I've kind of already mentioned this in the practice that we've done, but it's really important to try to keep repos limited to one project. Right now, we're talking about one repo for our portfolio website. Eventually, you're going to have 2 and potentially 3 repositories in total. One for portfolio, one for the capstone front end, and one for the capstone back end. And it's really important to make sure that when you create these repos, you're doing it for a specific project, and then to also avoid putting folders at the top, or sorry, avoid having one folder at the top and putting all of your files inside of it. Like we saw earlier with D2 at the top, and then inside of it, we have our index.html. Try to have a flat file structure where your index.html is at the top, and you can still have folders like image and assets and static and src and whatever folders you want to have, but try to keep it flat at the top, meaning that the entry point to your application, whether that's index.html or index.js, whatever that entry point is, try to have that at the top of the repository and don't nest it within an extra folder. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like we've corrected that for most of the folks that did that earlier, but in general, try to do that for your repositories. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. And I've tried to highlight this as we've gone through, but I want to try to, because we use the terminology repos and commits and push and all of this terminology. I just want to try to make sure that everybody is on the same page when we talk about this stuff. And we mentioned this a little bit yesterday when folks were asking about what's happening on our computer, what's happening on GitHub. So when we have our repository or our repo, it's a special folder that's on our computer, and it's a special location on GitHub. And when we use GitHub Desktop, we're managing the relationship between those two things. So when we commit and push, we're taking things on our computer and we're sending them up to GitHub. And then if we have other people working on the same project as us, they're also pushing to GitHub, and then we're pulling those changes down from GitHub. And this is kind of what it looks like when you have multiple people contributing to the same project. We're probably not going to end up doing that this week. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it's really, really important that we start getting in the practice of using GitHub Desktop as the entry point to doing our coding, because that ensures that we're only making changes inside of that special folder on our computer that is managed by GitHub Desktop. We saw an example today where we were making changes to a VS Code window that was editing files that we had copied from in order to seed the repo with those files that we dragged and dropped. So always make sure that when you're starting your coding, you go into GitHub Desktop and you open it up from there. And commits are those snapshots, and they're no good if you just leave them on your computer. They need to be pushed up to GitHub, and they are attached to a repo. They look kind of like this in that they form a history, a list of changes made on that GitHub repo, and you can kind of think of commits sort of like edits in a Google Doc. They're individual snapshots of the code at different points in time. Okay, and we've covered that terminology. Cool. Next up, we're going to talk about deploys, but first we're going to take a break. So it is 4:42. we will be back at 7:07. My math right? Yeah, 7:07. See you all at 7:07. Somebody raise their hand. A bear?
What do you mean by the root of a folder?
Sorry, say that one more time.
What do you mean by the root of a folder?
The root of our so I mean, let's look at so I mean the root of our repo. So here is the top level of our repo. I mean, I want to see the index.html here. I don't want to see the index.html inside of a folder called src. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So this is what I don't want to see. I want to see index.html and style.css and weather.html. I want to see that right here at the top of the GitHub repo, the root.
Okay.
All right, see you all back at 7:07. All right, let's get back into it. I forgot to do attendance. So I came up with, during the break, I came up with a fun way of doing attendance and also practicing pushing, commit and pushing. So the first thing I want everybody to do is I want you to go check your email for email from GitHub inviting you to be a collaborator on my repo deluxe attendance. Please go in there and accept that invitation. All right. So go check out your email. Make sure that you accept the invite to be a collaborator on this project. Then once you've done that, I'd like you to go into GitHub Desktop, click Add, Clone Repository, go to URL, and then clone down the repository. I'll paste the text here in Zoom chat. Clone that down. And then with that repository cloned down, I'd like you to go into VS Code, and inside this repo, just create some sort of file. This will be proof that you're here tonight. Create some kind of file, put whatever you want in it. I'm going to put Goat emoji. Create a file, commit it, push it. Oh, nice. And more. Very clever, just editing the README. If multiple people edit the README, we're going to get a merge conflict, and that's not going to be any fun. So please create a new file. But very clever on Mar to sneak that in. Nice. We're 100% HTML. And there's nothing in it. Is anybody having problems pushing to this repo?
Me, I believe.
Did you accept the invite?
Yes.
Okay. What error are you getting? Do you mind sharing?
Newer commits on remote. Desktop is unable to push commits to this branch because there are commits on the remote that are not present in your local branch. That
So
did a-
can you share your screen real quick? Show.
Yes.
Nice. So go ahead and let's see. So when you push origin, go ahead
Mhm.
and click over and push origin. Same thing. Okay. Click fetch. Okay. Click pull origin. So you're gonna grab the 14 changes that just occurred. Now click push.
Okay.
Try it one more time. Yeah. Pull origin. And then push. What file did you make a change to? Oh, you added Cornelius.js.
Yes.
Okay. Try pulling origin.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Push origin. Oh, what? Try fetching again. What is it this time? This is
I just keep finding ways to make your life harder.
no. I think I think you're just hitting I think you're hitting a conflict with somebody else as they're pushing. So yeah, there's a bunch of people that just finished pushing. Try pushing again. Let's repeat the loop until it lets you. There we go. So what's happening is you're trying to push your snapshot, but somebody has a newer one than you. And so you are basically fighting with a bunch of other people in class that were attempting to push.
Gotcha.
But you got it. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool. So we have 13 contributors, 68% HTML, 31% JavaScript. Very nice. We didn't get any R code, but that's okay. Maybe someone will bless us with some R code. Oh, we got we got a .aol file. Very cool. All right. Thank y'all for filling out tonight's attendance. That was awesome. Okay.
Wait, did mine work? Can we double check that? Because I was experiencing like similar to Cornelius' issue.
Just keep fetching and pushing until eventually it works, because I think we've got a lot of folks that pushed. Were you able to eventually get your push to go through?
Thanks, so yeah.
What file did you commit?
I just wrote my name under in the README section. Oh no, it looks like it didn't go through.
Yeah, I think you probably got a merge conflict because multiple people were trying to edit the README. Just a bear. I'm gonna enter it into Canvas using this GitHub repo. But Zakim, I'm just gonna mark you down. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's get into doing some actual deploys. Before we get into a deploy, though, let's talk about what it is, because I know I've thrown the word around, and let's just clarify. So, what does it mean to what does it mean to deploy? Get rid of that. So, at its simplest, take it from our laptop and put it in the cloud. As simple as that. But let's dive in a little bit deeper and talk about what this actually means. So I'm going to turn around and ask all of y'all, why do we deploy? Why do we want to deploy our code? Why don't we just run the code from our MacBooks?
Because it's only local on your Mac.
Did you say hurt your Mac?
No, it's only local on your Mac.
Right. Yeah. It's only local on our Mac. That's a good point. Yeah. Other people, anybody else have thoughts? Yeah, it's local. That's one reason.
It's probably because if you go into another system or use a different like desktop computer, like you're able to go and get said code like we did on GitHub. So if we're working probably in a remote location and don't have access to our office computer, we're able to access that via remote.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let me rephrase the question though. When I say deploy, I'm not talking so much about Git and pushing our code up to GitHub. I mean, why do we? So all of you have been working on learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? So that we can write these websites, we can build products, we can build software. The end result being that we take that and we get it in front of customers, right? We get it in front of the end users of our software. The act of getting that software in front of our users is deploying. It's how we get our code from our machines, not necessarily onto GitHub so that other people can collaborate on it, but the end product, we get that in front of people to use. Like if we're building a website to sell t-shirts, we need to open our website up to people to come and buy the t-shirts. So why can't we serve, in that example, why can't we serve our website from our MacBook? Why can't we sell t-shirts from our MacBooks? Can we? Should we?
Well, we only have access to it, right? Because we will only have access. We wanted, so we wanted to play so others can access it because it's
Yeah, I
pretty
was
much
gonna
we
say
have
that.
private access and they
Yeah.
only have public.
Yeah, good point. Great point. It's and that's what was mentioned earlier about it being local. It's on our Mac. Uh, other people, other thoughts?
No, I don't have anything.
Not everything's going to be on a MacBook.
That wanes a little bit philosophical, right? I mean, not everything's going to be on a MacBook. Yeah. I mean, what about poor old Windows? What about poor Linux? Well, let me propose this. Let's run it on our MacBooks. There's nothing that says that we can't run it on our Mac. I mean, we can certainly turn our MacBooks into servers. Uh, that's an option. No, nothing says that we can't make our MacBook the server. Um,
Uh, I was gonna say maybe because it is like for like security purposes, like you don't want anybody like get on like your MacBook and stuff, like have like you catch like computer herpes. So I'm just saying.
I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Like the MacBooks that we have, they're not meant for selling t-shirts, right? They're really fancy, expensive machines uh for developing the website, and they're great for us to be able to use. They're fantastic computers for us to be able to develop. Huge trackpads, nice keyboards, nice speakers. I mean, all that's great for us, but who cares about, like, the code doesn't care about any of that, right? It just wants to sell t-shirts. Um, and and to the point about security, I mean, if somebody breaks into our website that's selling t-shirts, I mean, I've got pictures of my kids on my MacBook. I mean, I've got tax documents, all kinds of stuff. I mean, my MacBook would be a treasure trove for somebody to be able to hack into. Uh, so there's the security concerns, right? And everything that people have mentioned so far is exactly on point. It's our MacBooks really aren't set up to be serving stuff. For the most part, we're going to develop locally, and so when we serve our content, we're viewing it on our local machine. It's not accessible on the network. That's not to say that we can't make it accessible. If you've ever done gaming at your house, then you might have messed with things like port forwarding or binding to an IP address. You might have looked at some of the networking stuff that's required in order to expose a service on the internet. Like if you ever played Minecraft, like exposing a Minecraft server for other people to be able to connect to. You could do the same thing with your Mac. You could make your website available for other people on the network. But what happens when we close the lid on our Macs? I mean, there goes the t-shirt selling website, right? Like our computers just went to sleep. So the reasons why we deploy is for all the reasons that y'all have mentioned, plus some additional ones. It's the fact that our Macs really aren't good at it. They're really not purpose built for it. There's the security concerns, and then there's just the fundamental hardware differences. Like we want computers that are always on and and always available, even when we shut them down. Even if we don't plug them into power, we don't want the t-shirt website to go down and not be able to reach customers. The other thing to consider too is that our Macs are only so powerful. When we're talking about a couple of people going to buy a t-shirt every minute or two, yeah, a Mac could obviously handle that. But let's say your t-shirt selling business is doing really, really well, and we make enough money that we go and place an ad for the Super Bowl. Well, all of a sudden we have on the order of millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people that are all of a sudden seeing our commercial during the Super Bowl. Our website for t-shirts is there, and all of a sudden they go thundering to their phones and their laptops trying to load our website. of course our Mac is not going to be able to handle that. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to just deploy stuff straight off of our MacBooks, and that's why we look into services like this. So there's a lot of people that will take your money, and there's a lot of people that will take your money in exchange for places to deploy your code. And here's a few of them if you've heard of them. And the buzzword here is it's the cloud. You know, that's where everybody says that you know, they get their computing resources from. But really, what the cloud is, for our concern in DevOps, is it's a place where we can host our application. We don't have to worry about whether someone has closed the lid on our MacBook. We can assume that the computers that we deploy to are always going to have a solid network connection. And we don't have to worry about the physical hardware necessarily, unless we really want to get into that. And then for the case like I described, where all of a sudden we have a bunch of people that are trying to load our website, we won't have to worry about managing physical servers and, you know, turning more of them on when we need them and turning them off when we don't. Whatever service we use should be elastic. It should be able to scale up and down with demand. And I'll just point back to the slide, like all of these companies are capable of doing the things that I just described. But there's a certain number of different tiers to these clouds. There's different kind of offerings, and we're going to be looking at one of them this week. It's primarily file hosting, but when I come back later, we're going to talk about some of the other types of hosting. This week, we're really only looking at what's known as file hosting, and that's because right now all we have are files. And sorry, that's a bad way of describing it, because at the end of the day, they're all files anyways. But right now, what we have are files that we need to distribute to users, meaning that when users come to look at your portfolio website, all they're doing is asking for an index.html, maybe a styles.css, maybe some images, and potentially some JavaScript. So all we need our computers to do that we deploy to, all we need them to do is serve copies of these files. That's it. But again, when I meet with you later on in the cohort, we're going to talk about more advanced things, like we're going to be talking about how to deploy backends, how to run databases, and so on. And for that, we're going to need more than just file hosting. But to start off with, file hosting is what we're looking at this week. And there's a lot of different offerings. Here are some of the really popular ones. We're going to look at Netlify later on in the cohort. Today, we're going to look at GitHub Pages. Amazon and Google and Microsoft all have their own offerings. And I kind of alluded to this already, but file hosting is really when someone goes on their phone or on their laptop and goes and visits your website, all the browser is doing is it's requesting these files and loading it. And that's all file hosting needs to do at this point. So we can get away with some of the simpler options. And then later on, we'll talk about application hosting. So I'm going to skip over these parts. I do want to mention server hosting briefly, though, because it's going to be a little while from this week to when I talk to you next. If you really are interested in servers and infrastructure in general, you can rent virtual servers. Again, if you've played games before, you might be used to things like this, where you can rent a server and run whatever you want on it. These are some of the companies that could do it. And if you'd like to learn more between now and when I see you next, please feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to talk to you about this. Okay. So the process for deploying to each of those offerings that I showed on the previous slides is a little bit different, but we're going to look this week primarily at GitHub Pages, because we've been using Git and GitHub to deploy things. All right, so spoiler alert, if you can commit and push, you've technically already deployed to GitHub Pages. And what I mean by that is we've already deployed. by simply using Git and GitHub. And what we've done yesterday and some today is we've created what's called a personal GitHub page. And if you want to see your personal GitHub page in action, you can actually do that right now. So just take the repo name that you have, and I'll do it mine in my browser. Just take the repo name that you have, go to whatever your username is, and then .github.io, and it should load your website. So check it out and make sure that I'm not lying to you. Once you have that, please come back to the portfolio links. And once you've seen that your website is working, please add it as a column in this sheet, and I'll add the extra column. Pages. Oops.
So the way we deploy it, we go to our GitHub online.
So the way that you can see your deployed website is to go to the name of your GitHub repository in the URL. So go to your GitHub username.github.io, and that will load the code from that repository that we've been practicing on. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Nathan, would you mind rewalking that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So just go to whatever your repository name is and enter it into the browser. So mine was du1ux.github.io. Just type that straight into your browser and make sure that it loads. And once you've seen that it loads, add it to the spreadsheet that we've been working on. I pasted the link to that spreadsheet in the Zoom chat. Does that make sense? Yeah, so Jada, that's exactly the format. Username.github.io. GitHub username.github.io. And I'm just going to pick on a couple people, make sure that the employees are working. Oops, don't want to edit. Cornelius, I think since you added me as a collaborator, I'll bet you when I open up your website. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I was like, wait, didn't we collab on this one? I was like, oh, yep.
I'll take credit for that. Austin looking nice. Nice. The good old Netflix website. Nice. The somewhat programmer, very cool. Oh wow, I like this color scheme. Very nice. Very nice. Cool. Dang, this is nice. I like this. I like this picture.
Still work in progress, but yes.
Yeah, this is really nice. Okay. Anybody having problems getting their GitHub pages deployed to work? Okay. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about before we wrap up. There's a couple of rules, and one of the rules that you might have noticed is that we have this special format where it's sorry, let me share my screen. I am sharing. Okay, we have this special format, username.github.io. That is a special that's a special repository name in GitHub. So whenever you name a repo exactly that format, it will create this special GitHub page for you. It will do this special deploy. That's why I asked yesterday that we all name our repos this very specific exact thing. The other thing is that the repo needs to be public. I think this has actually changed. I don't think this is a requirement. I think you can make this your repo private and it will still deploy. You also have to have your index.html in the root of the repo. And I can illustrate that that this is a requirement by breaking my repository. Let me do that really quick and show you. So I'll switch back to my personal GitHub page. I'm going to open up VS Code. I'm going to take index.html and I'm going to shove it into a folder called src so that index.html is no longer at the top of my repository. It's no longer at the root here. I'm going to commit. Oh, I committed without a message. Shame on me. Okay, I committed and pushed that. Now if I go and look at GitHub, well, let me also, so I'll go into here. I've moved my index.html into a subfolder, so it's no longer at the root. And I'm going to change the name of my, I'm going to change some stuff in here. I'm going to say Lincoln Adams made an edit, save and push that. Change. Commit, push. Now, if I go and look at my website, notice that it no longer loads my website. And what's happening here is instead of loading that index.html, GitHub Pages is falling back to serving my README. This is the code, or sorry, this is the text that's inside of my my README.md. So if GitHub Pages can't find an index.html, if there's not an index.html in the top level of your repository, GitHub will fall back to the README. And if there's no README, I don't know what GitHub Pages does. I think it just doesn't serve anything at all. So that's why earlier we made sure that everybody didn't have their index.html inside of a D2 or inside of a subfolder. So make sure, I think everybody is doing this, but make sure that your index.html is served from the top of your repo, and that will fix this. Okay, so that's one of the other rules for personal GitHub pages. There is an exception to that if you have a docs folder. That's another special place that GitHub Pages will look, but that's it. All right. Talk about projects here in a second. Okay. The other thing I want to point out is that changes aren't instantaneous, meaning that if you make a change here, so let's go back to our GitHub, to our website. So notice that we have this README that's being served here. I fixed my website. Now my index.html is in my root. If I go into GitHub Desktop and I commit these changes, fix my website, this should make my website work again. I'm going to push, and then I'm going to refresh over here. I'm going to keep refreshing. Notice that the changes aren't instantaneous. There's going to be some lag time between when you commit and make a change to your code over in GitHub inside of your repository. There's going to be a lag between the time when you make that change and when you push it up and it gets deployed. So if you make changes and they're not showing up, here's where you can go to find out what's going on. So you can go to your repository. And if you see this yellow dot here that says pending, that means that GitHub is building and deploying your website. So until this pending goes to a green check mark, that means GitHub is still working on deploying your website. So if we refresh, there we go. It's now a green check mark. If I go back to my website and refresh, notice how my website is built and it's working. So there's some lag time between when you make changes and push them and when GitHub finally picks it up and starts deploying it to your website. Any questions about that? The other thing you can do is down here in the bottom right, there's this deployments section. This will also go green whenever you make a change. So this will go from that pending yellow circle to a green check mark when it's done. Okay. So you don't just get one GitHub page, meaning that later on when we work on the capstone and other projects, you aren't just limited to one, but you are limited with GitHub pages to a single what's called personal page. And what I mean by that, or what GitHub means by that, is this special username.github.io. You only get one of those because, of course, you only have one GitHub username. But GitHub has what's known as project pages. And the way that project pages work is they are attached to your personal page. And to help illustrate that, I'm going to go to the attendance repo, and I'm going to turn this into a GitHub project and set up its own deploys. So if you have multiple repositories, so let's say that you've got your portfolio and then you've got some other code project that you're working on. Maybe you've already started on your capstone. So if you have another repo created for your capstone, if you want to turn that into a website as well, it's really easy. You just go to settings, pages, deploy from a branch, turn this on, or sorry, switch branch from none to main and hit save. Give this a second. Let's go back to the main page. There we go. Yeah, so it's already building. We've got that yellow pending marker. So it's building our GitHub page right now. Under settings, pages, let's go back. Oh, sorry. So I have this in the slides. I should have refreshed my memory here. Yeah, so you go to settings, switch the source domain and hit save. It looks like they've added this additional checkbox where you need to switch the source from deploy from a branch to GitHub Actions. But either way, once you have GitHub Actions selected, it will start to build your website. But notice how it's attached this repo and its page to my personal GitHub pages. So the deluxe.github.io, remember that's that one personal GitHub page that you get. And then attendance is a project page, and there's an unlimited number of those. You just have to go into each repo that you want to set one up for and turn it on. And somebody created the index.html inside of attendance, and it's being served here on this website. I was here tonight. Any questions about that? We talked about troubleshooting. Just make sure that you check on that little yellow circle if you ever are wondering why are the changes that I'm making to my website not showing up. It might just be that GitHub is taking a little while to build that. Be aware that every time you commit and push, it's going to kick off the deploy, and GitHub does its best to allocate computing resources to build and deploy your website. And depending on how many people are using GitHub at any moment in time, it can go from seconds to minutes for your website to start deploying. Some common problems that we talked about: making sure that you have an index.html, making sure that the deploy is actually finished, that the little yellow circle has gone to a green check mark. Of course, if you mistype the repo name, that's one thing. The other thing that's a little bit less common is if your website has a folder, like for example, my website has a /image folder, and I can illustrate that by going to image, what is it, maxflix.png. Maxflix.png. Yeah, so my website has an image folder and it has 3 images in it. If I were to go and create a repo called img and create a project page for it, so a website for that repo, it would collide with this website and its image folder. So you can get into a situation where you create collisions between the files that are hosted on your personal GitHub page and project pages, because they're getting attached to that personal GitHub page. So that's another problem. It's a lot less common, but my advice is don't create any repositories. Don't create any repositories called images. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to say tonight about GitHub pages. We talked about the hypothetical situation where you are creating a product and you're doing really well, and you need to be able to handle traffic, you need to be able to handle customers, not in the single digits, but we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. GitHub Pages is in a great place to do that. GitHub Pages has some limits in terms of how much traffic it can handle. So a couple of interesting things here. GitHub Pages has a limit in terms of the total amount of the total size of the website that you can build. That's capped at 1 gigabyte, which is pretty generous, but just keep that in mind, especially if you are serving video from your website. If you upload lots and lots of videos, it's possible that you might hit that limit. And then there's a bandwidth limit of 100 gigabytes per month. And the way to break that down and think about it is, if you're let's go through this really quick. So 100 gigabytes, and let's turn that into megabytes. So that's 100,000 megabytes. If we divide that by 3, some bad napkin math here, but if we divide that by 3, so let's say that we have our website totals 3 megabytes, which is pretty big, but our website is 3 megabytes for someone to visit. We have a total of 30 megabytes of index.html, styles.css, and whatever images we upload. That means that we can handle 33,333 users per month. So in total, 33,000 people can visit our website before GitHub says that's enough. You've had enough traffic. Just keep this in mind. We're probably not going to hit that during this cohort unless someone has a wildly successful product. But GitHub Pages does have a limit in terms of how many files it can serve at a time. And then somebody was asking this yesterday, but the actual hard limit that GitHub puts on file sizes that you can upload is 100 megabytes, and that seems to be at odds with the GitHub Pages limit of 1 gigabyte. So I don't know what the discrepancy is there. Any questions about that? about traffic, about scaling GitHub.
I was
In
gonna
the
say,
event
is
that
there like a membership thing? Like a membership like on GitHub to increase that amount of storage, or is it just capped at that?
I think it's just capped at that. I don't think there's an enterprise version of GitHub Pages.
Okay.
If you need to scale beyond GitHub Pages, I think that's where something like Netlify would come in, because Netlify, you can pay them money and they will definitely scale you far beyond 33,000 people a month. Great question. Other questions?
Yeah, I got one. So, is it possible to upload your repository through GitHub desktop instead of just dragging the files through GitHub on its own?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can upload files to GitHub desktop using not doing drag and drop. The easiest way to do that is in GitHub desktop, click show in Finder, and then drag whatever files you want into that folder. So that saves you this step of initially doing the drag and drop through github.com. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I meant like creating like the new repository, then like doing the drag, or is it still like the same answer that you could just drag and
Yeah, you don't have to do the drag to initially seed the repository. You don't have to do that through the website. I typically tell people to create the repositories through the website just because it's, I don't know, easy. You can create repositories through GitHub Desktop. So if you go click here and hit add, create new repository, like let's say I wanted to start on my capstone. So I create a new repository called capstone and initialize this repository with a README. That's super important. You should do that every time. Click create repository. Cool. So I've created a repository. Let's say I wanted to put some files into it. I can do that by clicking show in Finder and dragging and dropping initial files into it. Alternatively, I can just go straight into VS Code and start hacking away on this. So index.html stuff. Save that. Cool. I have my first commit. Create index.html. Commit. Publish repository. So this is the same thing that I would do through the website, right? It's asking me the same stuff, just in smaller bite-sized chunks. So it's asking me if I want to keep this code private. I'm going to say no. What organization I want to put it under, I'm going to say none. I'm going to have it just be under my username. So let's publish that repository. Now I can view it on GitHub. So it looks exactly the same, right? Like if we had done it through the GitHub website, hit the plus, create repository, dragged and dropped our original files. Same sort of thing, just through a different mechanism.
And one more thing, like when you push the repository, I noticed there's like another tab of like GitHub Enterprise. Is that like different or is it like relatively the same thing?
To be honest, I've never used it. Let's see. You were talking about over on like this, like the
Yeah,
GitHub
yeah,
Enterprise tab. Never
yeah.
used it before. I think this is for companies where they host their own GitHub servers. Everything we've been doing is using the github.com, their public cloud offering. I think GitHub Enterprise is like companies where they have such sensitive code that they have to host GitHub internally, and they don't want their code on the internet.
Oh, okay, okay. So like keep it like kind of private in a way.
Exactly, like beyond making the repository private. Like for example, I can think of the government, for example, like the government probably uses GitHub in different sectors, and I'll bet you that they host GitHub internally as opposed to allowing like government software to be hosted on the open internet. I'll bet you they host it internally and keep it behind a firewall that you wouldn't ever be able to reach from uh, from the public internet. Is my guess. I do know like some regulatory finance companies, like I've worked at them in the past, they also do that where just because of the nature of the business that they're in, they can't use GitHub, can't push their code to the internet. Great question. Other questions about what we covered so far tonight? Is anybody nervous about the limitations of GitHub pages? Does anybody think they're going to blow through that 100 gigabytes per month? Be honest.
Well,
No?
question, like, sorry, my mind went blank. Well, it came back. So, is it usually like when you have multitude of projects and you put them on your GitHub, is it suggested to like, I don't know, maybe like put them in like on a side folder, like a Google Drive? Like, so if your GitHub is getting pretty full with like like you want to keep updating it with newer projects and you just have older ones just taking up space, would it just be okay to just have like a Google Drive like access for like future employers to be looking at? Or
Wear like a badge of honor. I mean, I'll put myself out there. Let's go look at me. Let's look at my repositories. I hope there's no curse words in here. All right,
we're
here's
all
all my
adults, we all
project.
know how to curse.
Yeah, but this is gonna be on YouTube forever. So yeah, I mean, like, look at all of my junk. So I don't clean my stuff out. Here's all the projects that I've worked on. I have no idea what this is. This is 2014. I have no idea what this is. I don't care. I do remember what that is. It was a cute project when I was a junior software developer. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, no, wear it like a badge of honor. I mean, all of the stuff, all the projects, all the repos that you built, use it as, I mean, employers will go and look at that kind of stuff. And I mean, they're not going to go like I just did. They're not going to go and dig into your oldest repository and like, inspect the code and be like, wow, back in 2014, Nathan had all of his JavaScript had console logs everywhere. And, look at this horrendous, like, no, nobody's going to be like that. Don't worry about especially don't worry about trying to make your GitHub look like, a well manicured, polished fake version of you. Like, we're all software developers. It's where we're going to go and write code and work on different things. And if that means a lot of repositories, then so be it. Wear it like a badge of honor.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? And I do want to point out, like, GitHub is meant for you. Git and all of that is meant as a backup tool. It's a way to collaborate with other software developers. It's a way to back up stuff and keep snapshots and use it as a tool. But to that aspect of employees and using it as a way to sell yourself, it's a great place to be able to put that code online. Like, you can work on the greatest code in the world. You can work on your capstone. You can work on some cool ideas. But if it's sitting in a Google Drive somewhere, like, it's not doing anybody any good. If you've got it, at least if you've got it up on GitHub, a potential employer could be like, oh yeah, cool. They hack on stuff. They are experimenting with new ideas. That's neat. I've had a lot of times where I've gone into an interview and someone has been lurking on my GitHub page because my resume at the top has my GitHub handle. I've had a lot of interviews where somebody will go and just surprise me and be like, tell me about X, Y, and Z, and it'll be one of my repositories. And that will be an instant conversations spark for, talking about something that I've worked on or something that I think is cool. So sharing a lot about myself. Is there any other questions that y'all have before we call it for tonight?
So this is another question. From your experience as a software developer, do you try to go back and use your repositories as a means of like references for basically projects? Like if you had a new idea, do you go back to your repositories as a way of means of a schematic for a future project?
Absolutely, 100%. I don't know how many times I've copied and pasted HTML code, CSS code, JavaScript code from an older project, like
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript specifically. Like if I write a function that parses a string, like for example, we'll take a date and turn it into like from a computer date into like a human readable date. I'll copy and paste that function from one project to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, all the time. Uh, and that's a great way too of like, I don't have to go and dig around on my computer to find exactly what folder, where that function is. I can, well, let me just show you what I mean real quick.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, to add on to it too, because I know we're going to be working on our capstones, and it seems like using the GitHub launch, like pretty much post deployment, is pretty much a good way for us to see how our project is coming along. So that
Yeah,
way we don't have to use like visual code and like go back and forth. Just pretty much we can deploy it and see how it is.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not only can you deploy the website, but you always have the ability to go into GitHub and see exactly what the code is that you wrote, and you can reference it anytime. Um, one example is like in Python, I typically forget how to set up things like new database models. So I don't know how many times I've done this. I wrote this, I was working on this project 2 years ago. I was writing this code like 2 years ago, but all of the time I'll come in here and I'll go and I'll look up different database models. Like how do I set up a model that includes text and integers and has a foreign key relationship, one to many, has text fields, can store dates. So I'll just come in here from time to time whenever I'm writing different Python project, and I'll just take and I'll copy and paste. It's a great way of building up a library of code snippets that you have. And also, don't forget, not only can you go to GitHub to find the code that you've written, but you can go to GitHub to find the code that other people have written. Like if I go to codesearch.github.com, so cs.github.com is a search, but is a shortcut, but also github.com/search. You can go to GitHub and look up anything. Like if I wanted to look up in language, JS, date, parser, cool. I just found a function that allows me to parse a date time string, right? And so I can go some random project called cube.js has date parser.js. Nice. Okay. So this is basically showing me step by step how to take a date and turn it into something human readable. You can go to GitHub and you can find anything related to code. And if you have heard of GitHub Copilot, I'll give a quick plug for that. GitHub Copilot is an AI tool that basically will write code for you. And it uses it based off of training from all of the code that's ever been written on GitHub. So it's getting to the point right now where you can start to write a bit of the code, and GitHub will just suggest from its massive troves of code that's stored on it, it will suggest what the next thing is to write. It's pretty crazy. If
Okay,
anybody's
thank you.
interested in seeing this, I have a license for it and I've used it before in the past. It's really, really cool, and I'd be happy to show it.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm definitely interested for sure. I
I
mean,
use it
wait,
every day at work. It's awesome.
it seemed like the little head is like following like your mouse cursor.
Oh yeah, on the website. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty cute.
I find that to be pretty cool.
Cool. Any other questions before we call it for tonight? These are great questions.
None for me. You answered everything well for me.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome. Well, tomorrow we're going to look at taking our website and making it a little bit easier to access. I'm going to go into a little bit of networking discussion. We might also talk a little bit about We might talk a little bit about the terminal tomorrow. We might save that for Thursday. But other than that, if you have any questions for me though, feel free to throw them in CIC C6 in Slack. Otherwise, I'll see everybody tomorrow and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much for the lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great evening.
You too. Have a good night, everybody.
You as well.